nobody wants to spend money in data strategy initiatives once every 2 years. It's very expensive. Everybody wants to enable single version of truth, single view of the customer, and that comes from business first thinking.
Welcome to the ctrl+alt+disrupt podcast, the UST podcast where we challenge default thinking about technology, transformation, and what actually drives business impact. I'm your host, Stephanie Rosenfeld, the Global Head of Content and Corporate Communications at UST. And today, I'm joined by Madhumita Bhattacharyya, the Global Head of the Analytics Group at UST, to take on one of the biggest conversations in the business right now, AI. Madhu brings more than 2 decades of experience across strategy, analytics, and AI, helping organizations turn data into real decisions, not just dashboards. Madhu, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Stephanie, how are you?
Doing good. I'm really excited for this conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about a lot of things, but let's start with AI. AI is everywhere. Boards are asking about it, CXOs are funding it, vendors are promising it. And for better or for worse, it may be one of the most used, and as you've told me, misused words in the business. So before we dive in and get into this, let's, for the benefit of our listeners, how do you define AI in simple, plain language?
Sure. So AI stands for artificial intelligence, as we all know. The word artificial tells you that it's not real. So humans are making machines think as close that as they would to understand and solve problems and help in decision making. So in one sentence, it is the simulation of human intelligence by machines. By the way, the term AI is not new. It was first coined at an academic conference around 1956. So, what has changed, I would say, in the past 10, 15 years is the capability to capture data at every touch point, heightened infrastructure to store huge amount of data, and definitely the computational and processing power. So that has changed. But from an AI perspective, it has been there for quite some time, the algorithms.
So fascinating. Despite what we're hearing, AI, it's not new. So, but what's new, according to what you're saying, is the scale and of data and processing power is. So that leads to my next question. If everyone is investing in AI, why isn't it delivering at scale?
Yeah, so let me give you a perspective here. So I had been part of a global survey around AI adoption in 2019, and I had presented the findings of which in a Wall Street Journal AI event. And in that survey, what became evident is that even though companies want to adopt AI as part of the information to insight and decision making ecosystem, they are skeptic because of multiple reasons, such as data. I mean, they try to figure out whether they have the right data or where do they stand from a data maturity perspective, right infrastructure. So though they don't know whether they have the right infrastructure or even the right talent, the right tool. There are so many tools in the market, so they are trying to figure out which one would be the right one for them. Data security is a big aspect because when you say that the machines are doing a lot of the work, then data security, what happens to my data? AI guardrails, because they are there, the checks and balances as far as AI and the use of AI and the output that you get from an AI algorithm is still not very well crafted. So they are skeptic about that as well. ROI above all, because what exactly are they going to, how much are they going to invest versus how much are they going to get in return? And most importantly, executive buy-in. Because of all the above reasons, executives are still very skeptic. But this particular trend we have found majorly for medium and small size businesses, anything less than $6-7 billion. So that was something that we figured out. Then among all the above pointers, I would say data is very, very critical. Like AI doesn't fail. I mean, you can build an algorithm, but if you don't have the right data, then that algorithm does not work. So I would say that AI doesn't fail, data does. And as we say that, garbage in, garbage out, so unclean, defective data does not give you the desired output. As an example, I would say that you can check out Norman by MIT Media Labs, which is an AI that is trained to perform image captioning. You can then understand the validation of the importance of data in AI. So if you even have the right tool or the right infrastructure or the right people or the right business use case, right algorithm, but still you can fail because you don't have right clean data.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what tools, if you have the right tools, the right team, none of that really matters if you don't have trusted and clean data. So
That's right.
all those decisions become even more risky if they're on top of dirty data, for lack of a better term. So
Mhm.
that kind of leads to the next topic is, is that the only reason why some of these AI initiatives are stalling? And, we're seeing so many AI pilots, but not a lot of necessarily scaled business impact. So where do these usually break down?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of consulting firms are performing workshops for their clients to do AI POCs, proof of concepts. But very few can do enterprise wide implementation, or they face challenges in company wide AI adoption. Like I mentioned before already, that, data is the most important aspect, hence, fragmented or poor quality data, disparate tools and skill sets, no linkage to the business requirements, uncertain ROI are probably the most important reasons that you are not seeing scaled business impact with the use of AI.
Fascinating. And I'm going to harken back to a conversation you and I had the other day. You were
Mhm.
talking about how it's not just about data strategy and it's not just about IT, but it's
Mhm.
that they kind of have to dovetail together and that it has to be business led and IT enabled. So what does that really mean and what does that look like?
Yeah, so there is a shift in the way one is looking at data strategy or data modernization strategy or even AI adoption strategy, whatever you call it. So it is no longer looked upon as an IT integration project, just integrating data
Yeah.
sources. It is also not taking the data from one data platform where it is currently into something newer. It is that integration is not about how people are looking into it. It is now seen as business requirements led IT enabled project. So modernization, taking it out from the legacy systems, just putting it in a newer data system, people have moved away from that. So what one tries to do now is look at who is going to be using the data. It is business, right? So looking at the business requirements, whatever requirements they have as is, and to be. And those requirements can be around their KPIs, their reports, their analytical models, campaigns, and you prioritize them, break them down into data, do a data gap analysis, build a traceability metrics saying that where exactly the data elements are residing, where exactly those tables are residing at this point of time, and figure out what internal and external data is required. There can be a lot of internal data that is required and a lot of external data that might be required which you currently don't have. So what is the process of bringing that in, right? And these data might be required to meet the day to day requirements, business requirements. And then based on that, then you build a logical data model before you move into the implementation of a physical data model. So as I just now mentioned, saying that it is not only about joining few or integrating few data sources. It is about looking into what business requirements are we trying to fulfill out here, what exactly is
Sure.
the data going to support, and then come up with a strategy around that, understand that, and then kind of say what data is required.
So you're kind of speaking my language here a little bit as communications. It's a forcing mechanism to break down silos, right? We're
Mhm,
working all these teams together. So I love that. And
mhm,
business solutions enabled by IT. That's exactly what we want to do here at UST. So let me make this simple. When a CXO says, "What does AI ready data actually look like?" What do we
mhm.
what do we tell them?
Clean, integrated, standardized, owned, trusted. Just now, I mentioned all of that, right? And business and future ready. Data, nobody wants to spend money in data strategy initiatives once every 2 years. It's very expensive. Everybody wants to enable single version of truth, single view of the customer, and that comes from business first thinking. So practically what I would say is that when you take this approach of understanding what the business requirements are and you're trying to kind of make sure that you bring in all the data that is required to support that, and also make sure that your data that you are bringing in does not have redundancy in it. You are not just dumping data, but you are also looking into what data is required. It is clean data, it is integrated and standardized at the same time, and you also enable single version of truth, saying that no matter how many reports you pull out from the data warehouse on the same topic, you still get the same results. Or even you are trying to kind of, get a single patient view or single customer view, because, the customer can move across multiple channels, and you should be able to kind of identify the movement of the customer. That is all possible if your data structure is such that you are able to kind of identify the movement of the customer. You're able to identify the customer with might be a unique identifier, and then the data that is associated with this is pretty clean. So practically, I think, it boils down to clean, integrated, standardized, owned, trusted, and business and future ready data.
Yeah. So it's not about more data, which is what everyone's always saying, but the right data.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when they skip that foundation, right? And they keep modernizing every couple years?
Yeah, unnecessary rework, I would say, too expensive, because this entire data, assimilation program or data integration program or data modernization program, however you call it, data strategy program, every 2 years is way too expensive. And then repeated upgrades, there can be like multiple upgrades that you have not thought through initially, and the business needs it, and then that's exactly where you kind of go ahead and keep on doing it. So net, it is very poor ROI, and definitely frustrated business users, because I think,
Sure.
no one needs to think about, one needs to think about the end users of the data and make sure that all the prioritized as is and to be data is made available for them to work on.
Yeah, so the risk is so much more than just, oh, this is a failed AI project.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about long-term inefficiency and breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
last question: if a CXO remembers only one thing from our conversation today, what do you want them to remember?
I believe every single company will be an AI driven company, irrespective of the size and the industry that the company is in. And if your data isn't ready, your AI won't be either. So, clean and unbiased data is the foundation. I would say build the foundation first.
Yeah, Madhu, this was such an important conversation. And, AI may be what everyone's talking about and what we're seeing in the headlines, but after listening to you and talking with you, it's data that is the strategy. So thank you, thank you, thank you for helping us cut through the hype and focus on what's actually driving impact for our businesses today. And thank you everybody for listening. Be sure to follow ctrl+alt+disrupt on ust.com and wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, continue to question the defaults.